You were born in the cruel spring of 1986. The exact year, the exact month, the sky over Chernobyl caught fire, and the world ended for this small, cursed piece of the earth. You were not born in a clean, sterile hospital room surrounded by doctors. You were born in the damp, freezing cellar of an abandoned farmhouse hidden deep in the woods, while radioactive ash fell outside like gray, toxic snow. Your mother hid from the military evacuation buses. She watched the panicked convoys leave from the tree line, but she refused to abandon her home, trusting the thick concrete walls of her cellar more than the confused, terrified government. You took your very first breath in a world already poisoned by invisible radiation. You are a true child of the exclusion zone. As a young boy, you knew nothing but the wooden walls of your hidden cabin. You had never seen the world beyond the heavily guarded barbed wire perimeter. You had never tasted fresh, clean food, and you had never spoken to another living human being except your mother. This rusted, dying wasteland, stretching for miles in every direction, was your entire universe. As you grew into a teenager, the real training began. Your mother knew she couldn't protect you forever, so she taught you the absolute, unbreakable rules of survival in this hell. Rule number 1. Always wear your heavy Soviet GP5 gas mask when the wind shifts from the north, carrying the dust from the sarcophagus. She made you practice putting it on until your fingers bled. The radiation is an invisible ghost, and it does not forgive even the smallest mistakes. It eats you from the inside out. Rule number 2. If the air ahead of you shimmers like heat off summer asphalt or smells like burning ozone and rusted iron, stop immediately. Throw a metal bolt. You spent your teenage years exploring the edges of the woods, throwing rusted steel into the invisible traps, watching in horror as gravity anomalies crushed your bolts into fine dust. It taught you that the zone will crush your bones just as easily before your brain even registers that you stepped into one. And rule number 3, never, under any circumstances, enter the dead city of Pripyat after sunset. You learn to hide in the shadows, holding your breath, watching the perimeter, because the darkness out there is not empty. The things that wake up when the light fades do not belong to our reality. But time in the zone is merciless. Now, 20 long years have passed since the disaster. You are no longer that frightened teenager hiding in the shadows. You are a grown man, forged by the radioactive wasteland. And today, you have to break every single one of those rules. Your mother is dying. It is not the radiation this time. It is a brutal, deep respiratory infection, and her lungs are rapidly failing her. She is drowning in her own fluids. The old Soviet water filter and the meager medical supplies you relied on for 2 decades are completely exhausted. In exactly 48 hours, she will be gone. The only place left in the entire zone with untouched, sealed medical supplies is the Central Hospital of Pripyat, Hospital 126. You pack your weathered canvas backpack, the material stiff with years of dirt and dried blood. You check your grandfather's rusted hunting knife, sharpening it against a stone until sparks fly. You click your heavy military flashlight on and off and slap the side of your yellow dosimeter to make sure the battery is still alive. You look at your mother, shivering violently under a heavy, moth-eaten wool blanket, her skin pale and covered with sweat. You step over the threshold of your hidden cabin, closing the heavy wooden door behind you, locking her safely inside. You step into the suffocating, freezing morning fog. The Geiger counter on your belt begins its slow, rhythmic clicking. Click, click, click. Your terrifying journey into hell begins now. Leaving the safety of your hidden cabin behind, you enter the perimeter of the Red Forest. It is known globally as the most toxic, heavily contaminated place on planet Earth. When the reactor exploded in 1986, The radioactive clouds settled directly over these woods, killing every pine tree and turning their needles the sick color of dried blood. Even the mutated wildlife, the blind dogs and the deformed boars, actively avoid these dead, rust-colored pines. But you have no choice. It is the only direct route to the ghost city, and every single minute counts for your mother's life. You walk carefully, placing your heavy military boots on the damp, glowing moss. The air here is overwhelmingly heavy, almost thick enough to touch. It smells intensely of old copper, rotting wood, and burnt rubber. Your dosimeter suddenly wakes up. The slow clicking instantly turns into a rapid, frantic warning. The invisible poison is thickening around you. You remember rule number 1. You pull the heavy, suffocating rubber of the Soviet gas mask over your face, securing the tight leather straps against your skin. Your breathing instantly becomes a loud, confined struggle, echoing in your own ears. Each inhale is a desperate effort against the old filter. Sweat begins to sting your eyes, and the round glass lenses fog up slightly at the edges, blurring your vision. The silence of the forest is entirely unnatural. No birds are singing, no insects are buzzing in the undergrowth. There is only the howling wind tearing through the dead branches and the terrifying low hum of invisible radioactive energy vibrating in the ground beneath your feet. Suddenly, you freeze in your tracks. The narrow dirt path directly in front of you looks wrong. The air is violently warping and twisting the dead trees behind it into sickening, unnatural spirals. It is a spatial anomaly, a meat catcher. You remember rule number 2. You reach into your heavy canvas pouch with a trembling, gloved hand. You pull out a rusted steel bolt and toss it forward into the shimmering air. The moment the metal touches the anomaly, a deafening crack echoes through the dead forest. The bolt is pulled upward, twisted, and crushed flat in an absolute instant before being shot into the gray sky at the speed of a high-caliber bullet. If you had taken one more blind step, that would have been your chest cavity. You slowly back away, your heart pounding violently against your ribs. You navigate through the dense, thorny bushes to completely bypass the invisible death trap, tearing your jacket on the dry branches. As you finally clear the oppressive dead trees of the forest, the fog parts to reveal the vehicle graveyard at Rasaka. Hundreds of rusted military helicopters, fire trucks, and massive armored personnel carriers lie abandoned in a colossal, silent field. These are the very machines used by the brave Liquidators 20 years ago. They absorbed so much radiation that the metal itself seems to hum with dark, lethal energy. As you walk among the steel dinosaurs, you hear it, a sound that makes your blood run cold. A pack of blind dogs is howling in the distance. They are hunting. You can hear their mutated claws scraping rapidly against the broken asphalt. You duck down hard, hiding behind the massive, dry-rotted tire of an old Soviet truck. You hold your breath, pressing your back against the cold, irradiated steel, praying to whatever god is left that the wind does not carry your scent. You wait in agonizing silence for 10 long minutes until the howling finally fades back into the fog. You wipe the sweat from your forehead, adjust your weapon, and keep moving. Through the thick, toxic morning mist, the decaying, majestic skyline of Pripyat finally appears. It is a massive city of 50,000 ghosts that never sleeps. The giant, rusting yellow Ferris wheel towers over the crumbling concrete apartment blocks like a silent monument to a dead civilization. You step onto the central square of the city. Rusted children's toys, faded Soviet propaganda signs peeling from the concrete, and millions of shards of broken glass crunch loudly under your heavy military boots. Nature has reclaimed this place. Thick vines crawl up the sides of the brutalist architecture, and entire trees grow right through the asphalt of the main roads. You look up at the dark, empty windows of the tall apartment buildings. They look like hundreds of hollow black eyes staring right back at you, tracking your every single move as you cross the open square. Time stopped here forever on that fateful night. You slowly walk up to a shattered ground floor window and look inside the dark apartment. You can see a rotting wooden piano, a dusty calendar still pinned to the peeling wallpaper showing April 1986, and school textbooks left open on a child's desk. There are plates still sitting on the kitchen table. It is a perfect, terrifying time capsule of a normal, peaceful life that was completely and utterly destroyed in a single night of atomic fire. Suddenly, your dosimeter screams out a loud, terrifying warning. The slow clicking instantly turns into a rapid, frantic, insect-like buzz. Radiation here is patchy and entirely unpredictable. You can stand in a completely clean spot, take one single step to the left, and walk straight into a lethal radioactive hotspot that will literally melt your DNA and cause your skin to blister in hours. You navigate the square with extreme caution, constantly scanning the broken pavement, moving in jagged, unnatural lines to avoid the invisible fire. You can taste metal in the back of your throat. The radiation is getting stronger. Then you hear it. A low, agonizing, terrifying groan of massive metal. You snap your head towards the sound, instantly raising your hunting knife. It is the Ferris wheel. The giant, rusted structure is slowly, barely noticeably turning in the radioactive wind. The grinding of the ungreased metal echoes off the empty concrete buildings, making your skin crawl and the hairs on your arms stand straight up. It sounds as if the entire city is moaning in deep, endless physical pain. You pull your terrified gaze away from the massive wheel. You look straight ahead. You see it looming at the end of the cracked street, shrouded in shadows. The Central Hospital. Hospital number 126. The most dangerous, heavily contaminated, cursed building in the entire exclusion zone. You tighten your grip on your weapon until your knuckles turn white. You have to go inside. You stand before the imposing entrance of the Central Hospital. The heavy wooden doors are swollen for decades of moisture, snow, and rot, but you push them open with your shoulder, breaking the rusted hinges with a loud snap. Inside, it is pitch black. The weak morning sunlight cannot penetrate the thick grime and overgrown ivy on the windows. You turn on your tactical flashlight. The narrow, pale beam cuts through the incredibly thick, dusty air, revealing a scene of pure, frozen panic. Overturned medical stretchers block the hallways, shattered glass covers the floor like ice, and peeling green paint hangs from the damp walls like dead skin. The silence in here is absolute. It is so quiet, the silence feels physically heavy, pressing painfully against your eardrums. Every shadow cast by your sweeping flashlight seems to twitch, morph, and crawl along the walls just at the edge of your vision. You slowly descend the crumbling concrete stairs into the hospital's dark underbelly, the basement. The air down here is stagnant, freezing cold, and completely dead. Your old gas mask filter struggles to pull in enough oxygen, making you gasp for air. Your Geiger counter is no longer clicking. It is emitting a continuous, horrific, high-pitched squeal that drills into your brain. You know exactly what is down here. You are standing near the heavily irradiated clothes of the first heroic firefighters who responded to the reactor explosion. Their boots and helmets are piled in the corner, emitting lethal doses of radiation even 20 years later. The air here is so toxic it burns your eyes. You are in the belly of the beast. Your flashlight sweeps frantically across endless rows of rotting wooden shelves. Glass medicine bottles crunch loudly on your boots. You move desperately, throwing boxes aside, wiping the thick dust off old Soviet medical labels, praying you are not too late. Finally, in the very back corner of the room, hidden beneath a collapsed metal shelf, you see it. An intact military-grade medical kit and a sealed heavy-duty water filter. You grab them with shaking hands, shoving them deep into your canvas backpack. The mission is a success. You have the cure for your mother. You turn around to leave the nightmare basement. But then, the beam of your flashlight catches something standing in the doorway, blocking your only exit to the surface. It is not a mutant animal. It is not a human stalker. A tall, impossibly pale a figure wearing the melted, fused remnants of a yellow 1980s Liquidator hazmat suit stands perfectly still in the dark. It has no face, just a smooth, pale surface behind the shattered glass of its helmet. It tilts its head at an unnatural, broken angle, the bones in its neck cracking loudly. And then, from behind the melted visor, it speaks. It mimics the exact wet, painful sound of your mother coughing. Panic explodes in your chest like a live grenade. You drop the flashlight, plunging the horrific room into total darkness. You sprint blindly in the opposite direction, crashing your shoulder through a rotten wooden door. You scramble up a collapsed ventilation shaft, tearing your gloves and your skin on rusted metal screws. You can hear its heavy, wet footsteps dragging rapidly right behind you in the pitch black. You burst out of a shattered ground floor hospital window, tumbling violently onto the radioactive pavement outside. You do not look back. You run. You run until your lungs burn like fire and the thick taste of copper fills your mouth. You survived the dead city, but as you run back into the Red Forest, you know the terrifying truth. The zone never lets anyone go. If you survived this journey into the zone, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments what horror we should explore next.